Hey, this is Nico from Licks of the Beast. This video is going to be an introduction to the stylistic differences between Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, and Janick Gers. So if you're a new fan of Iron Maiden, you're never quite sure who plays what, or if you're just curious about what makes up their guitar styles, this video is definitely for you. Now in this video we're not going to go too much in depth, but just enough to give you a good basic idea of the main differences between the three. And to that end we're going to look at four main aspects of their playing: phrasing, vibrato, pace, and tone. The first aspect we're going to look at is phrasing. Now in musical terms, phrasing refers to how one expresses a musical idea, be it a lick or a melody or a run. It's a bit like everyone has their own way of speaking. Where you put the accent on a sentence, where you tend to pause, your inflection, your own accent, etc. So to illustrate the difference in phrasing styles in a way that's simple and easy, I'm going to be using the most basic of rock licks as a starting point. Dave uses a lot of legato phrasing, so hammer-ons, pull-offs, bends, slides, trills, and he blends them all seamlessly, so his playing has a certain roundness to it. So here's how he would approach this kind of lick. Adrian, on the other hand, tends to have a more choppy kind of phrasing. He uses a blend of staccato and legato, although his legato tends to have a little bit more of a slurred or a dragging feel to it. He often uses techniques such as rhythmic displacement or pedal point using open strings, or even these long stretched out cascading lines. His playing style is very melodic but also very rhythmic and tends to have this kind of a bouncy quality to it. So here's how he would approach this lick. Janick's phrasing really stands out due to his very staccato approach where he picks almost every note. His fast-picked runs are outlined by long and sharp bends, and his lines are not always linear. His playing has what I would best describe as kind of a zigzag quality to it. So here's how he would approach this kind of lick. Now let's look at vibrato. Dave has a very swelling kind of vibrato, kind of like a slower version of B.B. King's hummingbird style. So he'll use vibrato as a way to add a pulse to a longer note, and very often it'll become a very important part of the actual melody. And it's got a very vocal quality to it. So his vibrato is kind of like this. Adrian's vibrato stands out in a big way, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to consider him as having one of the best vibratos in rock and metal. It's a very deep and wide vibrato, and he uses it to accentuate phrases very strongly. Obviously I can't do it exactly like he does because there's a lot of subtleties, but it's something like this. Janick has two approaches depending on what he's trying to convey. The first is he doesn't apply any vibrato at all, so you'll hit long notes just deadpan like this. The second is he'll apply a very nervous kind of vibrato, a little bit like this. Or he'll do it with the whammy bar like this. Now let's talk about pacing, which is the overall flow of a solo or a melodic idea. Dave's pacing could best be described as very consistent. He always has a very steady flow, and that's regardless of the speed he's playing at. This gives his solos a very hypnotic quality. So his pacing would be something like this. Adrian is an absolute master of tension and release, which is an important part of music in general. So he'll push the pace a little bit here, then pull it back a little bit there, and then maybe throw in a flurry or something unexpected to keep it interesting. Janick's pace is a little bit more like Dave's, but because he's mostly picking the notes, I would describe it more as relentless. He just grabs you and doesn't let go until he's done. Something like this. Last but definitely not least, we're going to talk about tone. Now, a better term for what we commonly call tone would probably be timbre, but either way, tone is a combination of a variety of things. The guitar you use, your pickups, your amp settings, your pedals, effects, the strings, your pick, but it ultimately all starts from how you play. For example, the way you pick. Do you pick close to the bridge? Or do you pick close to the neck? You pick hard? Or soft? Or do you do a combination of the two? Bending is another example. Do you tend to bend softly? Or hard, really digging into the strings? So all of these things are going to have a huge impact on a guitar player's tone. So Dave's tone is very rounded and smooth. He uses the neck pickup a lot for his solos, and that gives his sound a little bit of a darker, rounder quality. And the way his EQ is set up and the way he plays kind of has this glassy sound, something like this. Adrian's tone is brighter and more mid-rangey. It has a sparkle to it, and he tends to play with dynamics a lot, so that makes certain accented notes really stand out. Janick has a very unique tone, and while sometimes he delves into Dave's territory a little, his sound is usually unmistakable. You can always recognize a Janick solo by his harsh and aggressive tone. It's not overly saturated with distortion, so his notes come through really crisp. Alright, so that's it for now. The reason I wanted to do this video is because this is actually a question that comes up all the time. How do I know which guitar player is playing which solos on which songs? And I hope that this video will help clarify that a little bit. And if you have a favorite of the three, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all soon with more licks of the beast.